Oh shit, here we go again.
Should you play GTA the Definitive Edition? I don't fucking know. What are you asking me for? I don't know your taste in video games. Now, we all knew this thing was coming thanks to the leaks, but when we got the official announcement trailer, I pissed excitement. Anyway, so the remastered GTA trilogy has been out for just over a week now, and I thought I'd give my 2 cents on the game, and whether or not I think it's worth picking up. Now, I personally think the answer to that question can depend on whether or not you're experiencing these games for the first time, or if you're a returning veteran like myself. So with that in mind, I'm going to try, and probably fail at attempting to answer that question for both demographics. Now, I do understand that these games are intended to be remasters and not remakes, but we'll address that as we get on with the video. I'll be covering the visuals, soundtracks and gameplay for all 3 across the board, and then I'll go over each game individually if I think it's necessary. Now, I know you're all screaming at me to get on with this thing, so let's get started. Now, from the moment the trailer dropped, it seemed like the visuals for these games turned into Marmite, because everybody seemed to either love or hate them. From the trailer alone, the environments look more beautiful than a supermodel, and in-game, oh boy, are they drop dead gorgeous. Environments look a lot more colourful and vibrant, and lighting has been improved greatly. The draw distance is incredible and makes for some really nice snapshots. We even get some degree of dynamic lighting, as explosions now light up darkened areas, and it looks gorgeous. If you get arrested or die, a neat filter shows up on screen, highlighting the manner in which you fucked up, and it does look really nice. You also have the option to turn off motion blur in the options menu, thank fuck. But for everything that looks good, there's something that has the visual appeal of a naked mole rat. I noticed quite a few visual glitches, mostly with water. These puddles here look about as shiny as tinfoil. Hell, I've even seen it rain inside during cutscenes. I'm British, and I'm used to having shit weather in and outdoors all the time, but the last thing I want in a video game is to be reminded of that. Weather effects are where things start to go to crap as well. When the weather is clear, it's fine, but just look at this rain. I thought it actually looked okay in the trailer, but in game, it actually hurt my eyes to look at it. And I even started to get a headache at one point, and I know I'm not the only person to make this complaint either. This was especially bad in GTA 3, as at times I couldn't even see where I was going. I would much rather wipe my ass with sandpaper than have to keep staring at this crap. But the characters, oh boy, it's a mixed bag. It's like a bag of pick and mix, but imagine if some of the sweets are fresh and the rest are a year out of date, covered in Tabasco sauce. Some folks look okay, and some just look like they're in pain. I mean, look at Lance for instance. He looks like he's been using stinging nettles to wipe away Vindaloo-induced diarrhea. Claude still looks recognisable, but he now looks like he's made out of plastic. My boy Tommy looks like he's doing a bad Elvis impersonation, what with his hair having grown up to twice its original size. Not to mention he's put on a bit of weight.
Fat boy.
Avery Carrington now looks like he's from Asia instead of Texas. And CJ, you know what? CJ and his boys look alright. You get a pass, CJ. Good job. Ah! No, you know what? No you don't. The biggest addition to the gameplay is the much needed ability to restart a failed mission. No longer do you have to travel all the way back to the start point. Now you can restart as soon as you fail. But only when you fail. You can't restart from the pause menu. And GTA 3 and Vice City don't have checkpoints. But San Andreas does for some reason. What, was it too much effort to put it in for all 3 games? A nice new feature is that when you're on a mission, a waypoint on the radar will show up to help you find your way there. Which does come in handy, I must admit. I'm not sure if you can turn this off, but it's hardly game breaking if you can't. I have also noticed that the frame rate tends to stutter from time to time. Now I think that the game is supposed to be able to run at 60 FPS, but that rarely happened for me. I should probably point out that I'm playing these versions on the Xbox One, so frame rates may vary for other platforms. Another minor detail that is welcome is that there is no longer a loading screen in GTA 3 or Vice City when you travel between the islands, and it just makes travelling a whole lot smoother. Now when Rockstar announced these games, they said that they would feature a more modern control scheme, similar to the one in GTA 5. This includes a weapon wheel and a radio wheel, to make cycling through both faster. But despite these quality of life improvements, there's still some problems. Something that does come in handy is the autosave system. This came in especially handy for me because a couple times my game crashed, but when I booted it back up, it put me straight back into the mission that I was already on. But now that we're using GTA 5 style controls, driving has become an absolute pain in the ass, especially for drive-bys. In case you aren't familiar with the old controls, you accelerated with A and used the left and right triggers to look left and right, or pressing B to fire. If you wanted to look behind you, then you held down both triggers. Easy. Now A and B are your side viewing buttons, while the triggers are the accelerator and brake. This also means that pressing A and B together is how you look behind you, which is more impractical than an umbrella made out of tissue paper. Thankfully, you can look behind you by holding the right thumbstick down, and you can also fire to either side by swinging the camera around. But this just wasn't necessary. Plus, you still use the triggers to look left and right when riding a bicycle, so what was the point? This might not be an issue for newer players, but for those of you who are familiar with the old controls, then this might throw you off. It definitely did for me. One nice addition is that you can now aim and lock onto vehicles, which does come in handy. Something else that really pisses me off is that there is now a delay for sprinting, which makes getting away from explosions a lot harder. Plus, you now have to mash the A button to run instead of just holding it down. Does the phrase 2 steps forward and 1 step back come into mind for anyone? So GTA 3 is the game out of the original trilogy that I had the least amount of experience with. I played Vice City when it first came out, then got San Andreas, and then years later I picked up the OG. I will just say right away that GTA 3 is my least favourite of the trilogy. Hell, to be honest, I actually prefer Liberty City Stories. This one played the worst back in the day, and it still does now. The lock-on aiming is still god awful, and if there was one thing that I wished had been fixed, it is this. My main issue with this updated version though is the visual glitches, as this game suffers the most from the updated graphics. But also that god awful rain. It now seems to rain every 5 minutes or so, and after a while I was just like, bollocks to this. However, it's not all doom and gloom, as now this game does have a map. Thank fuck. Now with a simple press of the pause button, you can take a look at the map and find your bearings. It's just a shame that this game and Vice City now use the sound effects from the San Andreas pause menu. Like, why? Now Vice City has the biggest place in my heart due to being my first GTA game, as well as introducing the absolute best protagonist in the series, the king himself, Tommy Vercetti. But when I booted this thing up for the first time, I noticed that the awesome intro cinematic hasn't even been updated. They just used the original footage. It's lazier than an 18-year-old on a Sunday after a night out on the binge. I know I've already whinged about the visuals a lot, but I think the characters suffer the most in this game. Despite having a more clear texture on his face, Tommy now looks less expressive and emotive than in the original, and it's just sad to look at.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Hey, remember how the chainsaw would leave blood splatters on the screen after you killed someone? Yeah, not anymore. Don't like it? Well, tough shit. Hey, guess what? The intro for San Andreas also uses the original footage. It was also here that the subtitles and audio began to fall out of sync. Sometimes the cutscenes would cut before the dialogue had even finished. You can expect more performance issues here than the night you lost your virginity.
Let's go, bitch.
A lot of the environments in this game are now also really quiet. Like, why don't they have music playing in the gym or clothing shops anymore? It just makes these places seem so empty and lifeless. As I said earlier, for some reason this is the only game in the trilogy that uses checkpoints in missions. And it's the only one that doesn't replay the cutscene when you restart. It's really weird. But to be honest, I'm over this thing by this point, so let's just sum up. I didn't want my first review on this channel to be so overly negative, but I do have to be honest with you guys. I was really excited when the trailer dropped, but when I looked closer at it, I became cautiously optimistic. Now playing these things doesn't even make me disappointed, just sad. You can't call these things the definitive edition when stuff from the originals is missing. I know there's the whole copyright thing with the music, but that doesn't change the fact that part of the originals is gone. The visual and even the mechanical issues that I and plenty of other players have experienced doesn't help this trilogy's case either. Honestly, Rockstar should have remastered this themselves, instead of leaving it to a company that primarily does mobile games. The biggest offender of all is the fact that Rockstar have delisted the original versions too. Like, they're really trying to push these things. Don't get me wrong, remastering these classics is a good idea. In fact, it's a great idea.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea.
However, it's being poorly executed. But back to my original question, should you buy this thing? To be honest, if you're new to these games, then I think you might be able to squeeze a bit more enjoyment out of them than those of us who are fans of the originals. On the whole, this thing feels like they tried to remake the games, but said screw it halfway and just made a half-assed remaster instead. Now we're apparently getting a remaster or a remake of GTA 4 according to some recent leaks. So if that's the case, then Rockstar, please learn from this. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, and be sure to stick around if you want to see me babble on about more games in the future. Always remember to work hard and play harder. GG.